The sky over Venora City turned an unusual shade of amber on the evening of August 12th, 247. Most citizens were too absorbed in their daily routines to notice the atmospheric anomaly. Some blamed it on the newest solar shield malfunction. Others thought it was just another side effect of the planetary alignment that the news had been discussing for weeks. None of them suspected that it marked the beginning of humanity's greatest political experiment. Lan stood at her classroom window, gazing at the strange colored sky. As a primary school teacher, she had developed a habit of noticing small changes in her environment, a skill honed from years of monitoring 25 children simultaneously. The amber light caught her attention, making the cityscape look surreal with its gleaming vaulted domes designed to block harmful radiation. At 32, Lan had lived her entire life within these protective structures, like most Earth citizens following the great solar storms of the 2080s. "Beautiful, isn't it?" asked Min, the school's technology engineer, joining her at the window. His glasses reflected the amber glow, giving his eyes an otherworldly appearance. "Beautiful but unusual," Lan replied, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "Almost like a warning." Min laughed. "Always the cautious one. The planetary alignment is affecting our atmosphere. That's all. The official channels confirmed it this morning." Lan nodded but couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The official channels had been wrong before, especially since Earth joined the Planetary Alliance 70 years ago. Information now passed through so many bureaucratic filters that by the time it reached ordinary citizens, it barely resembled the truth. "Maybe," she conceded, gathering her teaching materials. "Are you coming to the community meeting tonight? Another one of your grassroots gatherings?" Min's expression was skeptical but not unkind. "What's the agenda this time? More complaints about corruption that nobody in power will ever hear?" Lan sighed. "It matters that we talk about these things. Min, the Northeastern District lost water again yesterday because funds for infrastructure maintenance disappeared into someone's pocket. 3 children in my class couldn't bathe before school. In 2147, with all our technological advancements and interplanetary alliances, how is this still happening?" Min's expression softened. "You're right. I'll be there." What neither of them knew was that the community meeting would never take place, at least not in the way they had planned. At exactly 11:47 p.m. that night, as Lan was preparing her notes for the meeting, metallic objects appeared in Earth's orbit. They weren't the usual transport ships or maintenance vessels. These were smooth, seamless crafts that reflected no light. They moved with impossible precision, positioning themselves above every major city on the planet. In Venora, the city's night sky suddenly brightened as if daylight had arrived prematurely. Citizens emerged from their homes, staring upward in confusion and awe. Then came the silence, a complete cessation of all electronic communications. Screens went blank, communication devices died, and even the constant hum of the city's energy grid fell silent. Lan rushed to her window, her heart pounding. The amber sky was now pierced by brilliant white beams extending from the hovering crafts. These beams swept through government buildings, executive residences, and corporate headquarters. When they retreated, something fundamental had changed. Every person in a position of formal leadership had vanished. The president, along with her entire cabinet, the global Senate members, corporate executives, military commanders, religious leaders, even local officials like Mayor Trin, known for his extravagant lifestyle funded by suspicious sources. All gone. Approximately 17,000 individuals worldwide, according to later estimates. By morning, panic had taken hold. Emergency broadcasts on ancient radio frequencies, the only technology still functioning, confirmed what seemed impossible. Every formal leader on Earth had disappeared simultaneously. Theories ranged from mass assassination to spontaneous combustion, but most people recognized the truth. Something not of this world had taken them. Lan found herself walking through chaotic streets toward her school, driven by an instinct to check on her students. Along the way, she encountered Chi, a local independent journalist known for her dogged investigations into corruption. "It's them, isn't it?" Lan asked, not needing to specify who they were. Since Earth had joined the Planetary Alliance, humans had become accustomed to the existence of other civilizations, though direct contact remained rare and regulated. Chai nodded, her recording device, an old-fashioned mechanical one that had survived the electronic shutdown, clutched in her hand. "All leadership positions?" "Every single one. Too precise to be random. Too coordinated to be human." "What happens now?" Lan asked, watching as people argued on street corners and raided stores for supplies. Chi's expression was grim but determined. "That's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm heading to Central Square. People are gathering there." "I'll come with you," Lan decided, sending a quick message to her students' parents on her backup mechanical communicator, advising them to stay home. Central Square had transformed into a scene of controlled chaos. Thousands of citizens had congregated, forming impromptu discussion groups. Some advocated for immediate evacuation, others for military retaliation, though against whom and how remained unclear. And still others proclaimed it was the beginning of the end times. In the center of the square, a group had assembled a makeshift platform using cargo containers. A woman stood atop it, trying to bring order to the proceedings. "We need to establish emergency protocols," she shouted through a hand-powered amplifier. "Food distribution, medical services, security, these things won't run themselves." Arguments broke out. Who would make decisions? Who had the authority? The woman on the platform, Lan later learned her name was Dr. Lin, a quantum physicist, struggled to maintain control of the crowd. "Perhaps," Lan found herself saying, her voice barely audible above the commotion. "This is an opportunity." Min, who had appeared beside her, gave her a puzzled look. "An opportunity? For what?" Lan took a deep breath. For something different. For self-governance. The idea seemed to crystallize in her mind as she spoke it aloud. She had spent years teaching her students about democratic principles, about community responsibility, about the power of collective decision-making. Yet the adult world operated under systems of representation that had grown increasingly distant from those they claimed to represent. "Help me up there," she said to Min, pointing to the platform. Min looked surprised but helped her navigate through the crowd. When Lan reached the platform, Dr. Lin gave her a questioning look but handed over the amplifier. Lan had never addressed more than a classroom of children and their parents. Now, thousands of faces turned toward her, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile. "What if?" she began, her voice shaking slightly before finding its strength. "What if this isn't a disaster, but an experiment?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Whoever took our leaders, and we all know it wasn't human, they didn't harm the rest of us. They didn't destroy infrastructure. They took only those who held formal power." "So what?" someone shouted. "We need leaders." "Do we?" Lan countered, surprising herself with her boldness. "Or do we need governance? Because those aren't necessarily the same thing." The crowd grew quieter, listening. "I propose we call this what it is. A self-governance experiment. Instead of rushing to replace our missing leaders with new ones who might fall into the same patterns of corruption and self-interest, let's try something different. Let's govern ourselves. Directly. Collectively." The idea wasn't entirely new. Theoretical models of direct democracy enhanced by technology had been discussed in academic circles for decades. But they had always been dismissed as impractical, utopian fantasies by those in power. "That's insane," a man in an expensive suit argued. "You can't have millions of people making every decision. It would be chaos." "Not every decision," Lan clarified. "But the important ones, yes, and not chaos, but true democracy. With today's technology, or yesterday's, before the shutdown. We have the means to implement systems our ancestors could only dream of. Surprisingly, it was Dr. Lin who came to her defense. The young woman has a point. Our governance systems have become increasingly dysfunctional. Perhaps this is a chance to test alternatives. Debates erupted across the square. Some dismissed the idea outright, while others engaged thoughtfully, proposing modifications and raising concerns. Lan stepped back, allowing the conversation to evolve organically. She caught Chi's eye in the crowd. The journalist was recording everything, her expression thoughtful. By evening, something remarkable had happened. The crowd had organized itself into functional groups, each addressing different aspects of immediate community needs: food distribution, medical care, security, communication, and, most significantly, governance structure. Lan found herself appointed to the governance committee, along with Dr. Lin, a former legal advisor named Tuan, and several others representing different districts and backgrounds. This is temporary, Lan emphasized as they gathered in a nearby community center, until we establish a system for broader participation. Tuan, a skeptical man in his 60s with decades of experience navigating bureaucratic systems, shook his head. You realize the military will take control as soon as they reorganize. This little experiment will last a day, maybe 2. Perhaps, Dr. Lin said, but much can be accomplished in a day or 2. Surprisingly, the military didn't immediately assert control. With their entire command structure vanished, the remaining officers were focused on maintaining basic security and seemed reluctant to claim political authority. Similar patterns emerged globally, temporary councils forming, communities self-organizing. Within 3 days, Min and a team of technical experts had restored limited electronic communications. The news from around the world was remarkably similar. Confusion, initial panic, followed by emergent self-organization. The alien crafts remained in orbit, silent observers. 1 week after the abduction event, Venora's Civil Council, as the governance committee had come to be called, held its first citywide referendum. Using Min's secured communication network, citizens voted on immediate priorities and basic governance principles. 87% participation, Chi reported, reviewing the data. That's unprecedented. Even before the abduction, election participation rarely exceeded 40%. People are invested because they see direct results, Lan observed. They're not voting for representatives who might or might not honor their promises. They're voting on actual policies that affect their daily lives. The Civil Council functioned as facilitators rather than decision-makers. They organized information, presented options, and implemented the collective decisions. Committees formed to address specific areas: resource allocation, justice, education, infrastructure, interplanetary relations. Not everything went smoothly. Heated arguments erupted over resource distribution. Former elites attempted to leverage their remaining influence. Some districts tried to hoard essential supplies. But overall, the system functioned. People received food, water ran, disputes were resolved, and life continued. 2 weeks after the abduction, the alien crafts transmitted a message. It appeared simultaneously on all functioning screens, in all languages. The experiment continues. You are observed. Nothing more. But it confirmed what many had already suspected. This was a deliberate test. But a test of what? Men wondered during an emergency council meeting. And what happens if we fail? Or succeed? Lan added quietly. What happens if we succeed? The question lingered as days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The self-governance experiment evolved, adapting to new challenges. Min developed a secure blockchain voting system that allowed for transparent decision-making while preventing manipulation. Chi established a network of citizen journalists who provided unfiltered information about community needs and concerns. One of the most significant innovations came in response to the discovery of widespread corruption in the pre-abduction era. As electronic systems were restored, evidence emerged of massive financial misappropriation by former officials, including Mayor Trin, who had diverted infrastructure funds to personal accounts. The people should decide how to address this, Lan argued during a council session. These crimes were committed against the community. The resulting public tribunal system became a cornerstone of the new justice approach. Rather than professional judges, randomly selected citizen panels reviewed evidence and determined appropriate responses, with a focus on restoration rather than punishment. The process was transparent, broadcast to anyone who wished to observe. Former Mayor Trin's frozen assets, enough to have repaired the Northeastern District's water system 10 times over, were redirected to infrastructure projects. Similar redistributions occurred globally as citizens reclaimed resources that had been hoarded by the former elite. 3 months into the experiment, Earth received its first post-abduction contact from the Planetary Alliance. Their representatives, clearly uncomfortable with the absence of traditional leadership structures, demanded to speak with those in charge. "You are speaking with them," Lan explained during the broadcast meeting, gesturing to the thousands of citizens watching and participating remotely. "We make decisions collectively now." The Alliance representatives exchanged concerned glances. "This is unprecedented. It poses security risks for interplanetary relations." "Does it?" Dr. Lin challenged. "Or does it simply pose risks to the existing power structures within the Alliance? Our system ensures that agreements truly represent the will of Earth's people, not just a privileged few claiming to speak for us." The meeting ended inconclusively, but the message was clear. The Alliance was disturbed by Earth's experiment and considered it potentially destabilizing. Days later, Alliance representatives returned with a more direct approach. They demanded that Earth establish a normal governance structure within 30 days, or face exclusion from interplanetary trade and cooperation. The news sent shockwaves through the global community. While Earth had achieved remarkable self-sufficiency during the experiment, complete isolation from the Planetary Alliance would have severe long-term consequences. "They're afraid," Chi observed during an emergency council meeting. "Our success threatens the justification for their own hierarchical systems." "What do we do?" asked Tuan, who had become one of the experiment's most enthusiastic supporters despite his initial skepticism. "We can't simply abandon everything we've built." Lan had been unusually quiet during the discussion. Now she spoke. "We put it to a vote, not just in Venora, but globally. If this experiment truly represents the will of humanity, then humanity should decide whether to continue it despite the consequences." The proposals sparked the most extensive global referendum in human history. For 5 days, people everywhere debated the question: continue the self-governance experiment despite potential alliance exclusion, or return to traditional representative models to maintain interplanetary relations. The voting period was set for 24 hours to allow participation across all time zones. Min's blockchain system ensured security and transparency, with real-time results visible to all. As the final hours of voting approached, Alliance ships appeared in greater numbers in Earth's orbit, a none too subtle reminder of their power. The alien crafts that had started the experiment remained present as well. Silent observers. Lan found herself unable to sleep the night before the results would be finalized. She stood on her apartment balcony, looking up at the night sky crowded with vessels from multiple worlds. Whatever happened next would shape humanity's path for generations. "Nervous?" asked a voice behind her. It was Chi, who had become a close friend during the intense months of the experiment. "Terrified," Lan admitted. "What if people choose to go back? All of this work, all this progress, lost because of fear?" Chi joined her at the railing. "Then that would be the people's choice. Isn't that what this experiment is about? Trusting people to decide their own fate, even if they decide differently than we would?" Lan nodded slowly. "You're right. I just hope She didn't finish the sentence. They both knew what she hoped for. Morning brought the results. 73% in favor of continuing the self-governance experiment. Despite the Alliance's threats, the global participation rate had reached 91%, the highest in recorded history. The Civil Council organized an immediate broadcast to the Alliance representatives, with Lan selected as one of the spokespersons. "The people of Earth have made their decision," she stated, facing the array of alien diplomats on the screen. "We will continue our self-governance experiment. We value our relationship with the Planetary Alliance and hope to maintain peaceful cooperation, but not at the expense of our autonomy." The Alliance representatives appeared frustrated but not surprised. After a brief private consultation, their lead diplomat responded, "This is disappointing, but the Alliance recognizes Earth's sovereignty. We will maintain essential relations while monitoring this situation. Be advised that certain technological exchanges will be restricted until a more conventional governance structure is reinstated." It wasn't a complete victory, but it wasn't defeat either. Earth would face challenges without full Alliance support, but the experiment would continue. As the broadcast ended, a different signal interrupted all communications. The familiar message appeared on screens worldwide. Phase 1, complete. Phase 2 begins. Before anyone could react, the alien crafts that had maintained their silent vigil for months suddenly activated. Beams of light once again swept across the planet, not targeting buildings this time, but the orbiting Alliance vessels. The diplomatic ships retreated hastily, disappearing into jump points beyond the moon. Then came an unexpected sight. Thousands of smaller vessels emerged from the alien crafts, descending toward Earth's surface. They landed in central locations in every major city, including Venora's central square. The population watched in trepidation as the vessels opened, revealing the missing leaders, all 17,000 of them returning simultaneously, appearing physically unharmed but deeply shaken. President Nguyen, looking considerably less polished than in her official broadcasts, was among the first to speak publicly after being examined by medical personnel. "We were not harmed," she confirmed in a global address. "We were educated, shown the consequences of our leadership styles across multiple potential futures. It was both a simulation and something more, a reality we experienced subjectively over what felt like years, though only months passed here." Former Mayor Trin appeared before Venora's Civil Council, his arrogance replaced by something approaching humility. "They showed me the water system failures, the children who became ill because of my diverted funds," he explained, unable to meet Lan's gaze. "I lived through it as if I were those children, those parents. I felt their suffering." Similar accounts emerged worldwide. The abducted leaders had been subjected to immersive experiences of the consequences of their actions, forced to live through the suffering they had caused or ignored. It had been a profound form of empathy training, impossible to achieve through conventional means. The return of the leaders created a new challenge for the self-governance experiment. Many citizens worried that the former power structures would reassert themselves, erasing the progress of the past months. Lan called for a special session of the Civil Council, inviting both citizen representatives and returned officials to attend. The meeting was broadcast globally, with parallel sessions occurring in cities worldwide. "We stand at a crossroads," she began, addressing the packed assembly. "The experiment has shown that we can govern ourselves effectively, but we also recognize the expertise and experience that many of our returned officials bring. The question is not whether we need leaders, but what kind of leadership serves humanity best." President Nguyen, who had requested to attend Venora's session as an observer rather than a participant, raised her hand to speak. "May I address the assembly?" she asked. Following the Council's established protocols, a striking departure from her former authoritative approach. Lan nodded. and the global audience watched with interest as the most powerful human leader on Earth before the abduction stood to address a citizen assembly as a petitioner. What I experienced during the abduction changed me fundamentally. President Nguyen began. I saw futures where I continued to lead as I had before, consolidating power, making decisions based on political expediency rather than genuine human need. Those futures led to suffering on scales I cannot describe. She paused, visibly emotional, another departure from her formerly controlled public persona. I also saw futures where leadership took a different form, where those with expertise served as advisors rather than decision-makers, where transparency was absolute and power truly resided with the people. Those futures flourished. She looked directly at Lan. I don't ask to reclaim my former position. I ask to serve in whatever capacity the people deem appropriate, to contribute my experience while honoring the profound wisdom of collective decision-making. Similar scenes played out globally as returned leaders, transformed by their experiences, offered to integrate into the new systems rather than dismantle them. Over the following weeks, a hybrid model emerged. The direct democratic elements of the experiment remained central, with citizens voting on major policies and priorities. Former officials with relevant expertise served on advisory committees, providing information and implementation assistance but no longer wielding unilateral decision-making power. The alien crafts remained in orbit, but their presence became almost a normal part of the sky. Occasional messages appeared, progress noted or interesting adaptation, but no further intervention occurred. 6 months after the abduction event, Earth received a different kind of message. Not from the experimenting aliens, but from the Planetary Alliance. Request to observe Earth governance systems. Multiple Alliance worlds expressing interest in adaptation. It seemed that despite the Alliance leadership's initial resistance, citizens of other worlds had been watching Earth's experiment with growing fascination. The self-governance model, initially dismissed as primitive and chaotic, was now seen as innovative. They want to learn from us, Min said incredulously during a council meeting. The most technologically advanced civilizations in the known universe want to learn about governance from humans. Technology and wisdom aren't the same thing, Dr. Lin observed. Perhaps this is why we were chosen for the experiment. Perhaps they saw something in humanity that we ourselves had forgotten. 1 year after the abduction event, Earth hosted the first Interplanetary Governance Summit. Representatives, both officials and randomly selected citizens, from 12 Alliance worlds gathered to exchange ideas about collective decision-making, transparency, and directly democratic systems. Lan, who had returned part-time to teaching while maintaining her role on the council, found herself addressing delegates from across the galaxy. The experiment continues, she told them. We don't claim to have perfect answers. Our system evolves constantly as we learn and adapt. But we've discovered something fundamental. When people are truly empowered to govern themselves, when information is transparent, when participation is meaningful, when decisions reflect collective wisdom rather than individual ambition, society doesn't collapse into chaos as we were always told. Instead, it flourishes in ways we never imagined possible. After the summit, as delegates departed and Earth settled into its new normal, Lan received an unexpected visitor. A being emerged from one of the alien craft that had orchestrated the experiment, the first direct contact since the abduction. The being's appearance shifted subtly as Lan observed it, as if adjusting to be comprehensible to human perception. It spoke not in words but in concepts that formed directly in Lan's mind. You were the catalyst, it communicated. The experiment required one who believed change possible. Why Earth? Lan asked, finding she could respond in the same thought-based language. Why humans? Balance, came the reply, accompanied by impressions of Earth's unique position, advanced enough for complex governance but young enough to adapt, divided enough to need change but unified enough to implement it globally. Will you stay? Lan asked. Continue observing. A sense of gentle amusement flowed from the being. We have always observed. The experiment was not to test if you could govern yourselves. It was to help you remember that you already could. As the being departed, leaving Lan alone in the quiet meeting room, she reflected on how much had changed in a single year. From a primary school teacher concerned about local corruption to a key figure in humanity's political evolution. From a world governed by distant elites to one where citizens directly shaped their collective destiny. The experiment wasn't over. Perhaps it never would be. Self-governance wasn't a destination but a journey. One that required constant vigilance, adaptation, and participation. There would be challenges ahead. Resistance from those who preferred the old ways. New forms of power imbalance to address. Complex problems requiring sophisticated solutions. But for the first time in perhaps all of human history, those challenges would be faced not by a privileged few claiming to represent the many, but by humanity as a whole, working together in a global conversation about their shared future. Lan returned to her classroom the next day. Her students, as always, were full of questions about the visiting delegates, the alien crafts, the governance systems. "Miss Lan," asked one child, raising her hand, "before the experiment, did you know you would help change the world?" Lan smiled. "I didn't try to change the world. I just believed we could do better. And when the opportunity came, I spoke that belief aloud." "So anyone could have done it?" another child asked. "Anyone and everyone," Lan confirmed. "That's the most important lesson of all. The power was never in the leaders who had taken. It was always in all of us, waiting to be recognized." As she looked at the bright, engaged faces of her students, the first generation to grow up in a truly participatory society, Lan felt a profound sense of hope. The amber sky that had heralded the beginning of the experiment had given way to clear blue, but the change it had brought remained, reshaping humanity's relationship with power, with each other, and with their own potential. The experiment continued, and society improved. Not because aliens had orchestrated it, but because humans had finally recognized and embraced their capacity for collective wisdom. The abduction had merely created the space for what was already possible. A civilization that governed itself not through domination and hierarchy, but through cooperation, transparency, and shared responsibility for their common future.